My mother didn't believe me. Straight up, that's the line I need you to sit with before anything else. Because everything that went down after only makes sense once you get that my own mom looked me dead in the eye in her own kitchen and picked her son-in-law's story over her daughter's. 6 months later, I'm standing in the parking lot of my sister's wedding reception, wearing a dress I picked specifically to blend into the wallpaper, when a dude in a full navy dress uniform crosses the entire lot at a dead serious walk, plants himself in front of me, and salutes so hard my mother, 12 feet away, mid-sentence, telling some rando cousin how complicated my divorce had been, just stops talking. Cold. He didn't say my married name. He said a rank. My rank. So ask yourself the same thing everybody in that lot was suddenly asking. How does a total stranger in dress whites know something about this woman that her own family never bothered to find out? Stick around. It gets messier before it gets good. It always does. Name's Renata Ford. Everybody calls me Ren, except my mom, who's called me Renata since day one because she said it sounded like someone who'd amount to something. A wild thing to say to a newborn, but honestly, accurate description of the pressure I grew up under. I'm the middle kid of 3 sisters in a family that runs on keeping up appearances the way other families run on inside jokes. My dad's a retired judge. My mom chairs 2 charity boards and never forgets an anniversary. My older sister landed a cardiologist. My younger sister, the one whose wedding you're about to hear about, married into a family that basically owns half the commercial real estate in the county. And me? I did 8 years in the Navy as an intel specialist, 4 of those doing stuff I still can't fully spill at a dinner table. And when I got out, I did what the women in my family are trained to do with anything that doesn't fit the script. I folded it up small and shoved it in a drawer. I met Grant at a fundraiser my mom co-hosted, which honestly should have told me everything right there. Dude was charming in that frictionless way guys have when they've never had to earn anybody's approval. My mom was obsessed with him instantly, more, honestly, than she ever managed to be with the parts of me that didn't fit the mold. He'd call me his little soldier at parties in this tone that always landed a laugh, and I let it land, because calling him out in a crowded room felt like more drama than it was worth. My dad, quieter guy, pulled me aside once at Christmas and said, out of nowhere, "You seem smaller than you used to be, Renata." I told him I was just tired. He didn't push. Nobody in that family ever really did. We'd notice stuff and just let it sit there. Like furniture, nobody wanted to be bothered moving. The real wound under all of this, the thing that made everything hurt as bad as it did, wasn't even about Grant. It was about my mom. Growing up, I was always the daughter who needed an explanation. The one who joined the Navy instead of rushing a sorority. The one who came home different and nobody wanted to ask about directly. The one whose whole career got summed up at dinner parties as, "Renata's doing something with the government, we're not totally sure what." 30 years of learning that being believed in my own family was something you earned through being familiar and soft, not through actual receipts. So when Grant finally did something that needed receipts, some part of me already knew exactly how this was going to play out. I found the second phone in February. No Hollywood catch-him red-handed moment, just something embarrassingly boring. A shared iCloud storage alert that popped up on my laptop because we'd never bothered splitting our accounts. 10 months of texts. A woman named Priya, a client from his firm. Restaurant reservations. A hotel room booked under a fake name. On a weekend, he told me he was in Cincinnati for a work conference that, turns out, didn't even happen that year. I didn't scream. Didn't chuck the laptop across the room. I sat at our kitchen island for 40 minutes reading stuff I will never unsee, then closed the laptop and did the thing my whole life trained me to do with hard evidence. Documented it, quiet and thorough, like I was building a case file, because some part of me already knew I'd need one. I confronted him that night. He cried, actual tears, and for about 4 minutes, I almost fell for it. Then he hit me with the line that ended up running the next 6 months of my life. "You have to understand, Ren. You've been so distant since you got out. I felt like I was married to a stranger half the time." He didn't deny the affair. He just used me as his excuse for it. The stakes got real fast. I wasn't just about to lose a marriage, I was about to lose the version of myself my family had finally, grudgingly started accepting. Tamed, domesticated Renata, who'd settled down and quit being complicated. If this divorce went down on his terms, with his story as the official record, I wasn't just losing Grant. I was proving every quiet suspicion my mom ever had about the daughter who came back from the Navy different and difficult and hard to explain at parties. I remember standing in my closet that night, staring at a uniform I hadn't worn in 3 years, realizing with total clarity that the ground under my whole post-Navy life had just shifted, and I was the only one who'd clocked it yet. The story got to my mom before I did, which tells you everything about how fast and how slick Grant moved. He called her 2 days after I confronted him. Called her, not me, not my dad, my mom specifically, because he knew exactly who held the gavel in this family. By the time I sat down across from her at that same kitchen table I did homework at as a kid, the story had already set like concrete. Grant had been so patient with me for years, she said. He'd tried so hard. He told her, on a call I wasn't even part of and couldn't correct, that I'd gone emotionally unavailable after my last deployment, that I shut him out, that whatever happened with Priya was just a symptom of a marriage I'd already checked out of way before he did. Nobody's saying it's entirely his fault, Renata, my mom said, in that voice she uses to shut a topic down instead of open it up. But you gotta take some ownership of the distance in that marriage. You were never the same after the Navy. You know that. 34 years old, 4 deployments, and a commendation I couldn't even say out loud behind me. And I'm sitting there getting told by my own mother that my husband cheating was, at least partly, a natural side effect of my personality. I tried once to show her the texts. She waved me off before I even unlocked my phone. I don't need to see that, Renata. I don't want the details of your marriage falling apart. I just want you and Grant to handle this like adults, without dragging everybody through the mud. That was the false hope, and it died exactly how false hope always does. I thought if I just showed her the receipts, the actual documented truth, something would click. Some maternal instinct would finally override 30 years of preferring the neater story. Nope, she didn't want facts. She wanted the version that let her keep believing she'd raised a family with 0 real damage in it. My dad, for his part, said almost nothing, which by then I understood as its own answer. The one person who didn't flinch was my youngest sister's fiancé's brother, a guy named Thomas Ashe, Tommy, everybody called him, who I'd met exactly twice before that spring, at family stuff where he mostly sat off to the side, quiet, clocking everything. Tommy did 4 years in the Army as an MP before going into law enforcement, and something about how I carried myself at those family dinners had registered with him in a way it never did with my own blood. At my sister's engagement party, months before any of this went public, Tommy sat next to me on the porch steps while everyone else was inside and said, no lead up at all. You've got the same thing my old CO had. That thing where you make yourself smaller so the room doesn't gotta deal with you. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Sure you do, he said, and left it right there, which at the time was the kindest thing anybody in that extended family had said to me in years. The thing that flipped this from a private humiliation into a public one was my sister's wedding, 6 weeks out, and my mother's very calm, very specific ask that I not make things awkward by bringing up the divorce, or Priya, or any of that, in front of extended family and Grant's parents, who, despite everything, still got invited because my mom didn't want to punish them for their son's choices. Grant, for the record, was also invited to my sister's wedding. 6 weeks after I found the text, the real decision landed on me hard and fast. Show up, smile through Grant being in the room, and let a version of events that made me out to be the difficult, distant, partially responsible wife circulate uncorrected through my whole extended family. Or skip it and become, in my mother's eyes, the daughter who couldn't be an adult about her own divorce, confirming every fear she ever had about how the military changed me. I chose to go. Gonna be honest about why. Not because I'd made peace with anything, but because some stubborn part of me refused to hand my sister's wedding day over to Grant's version of the story by not showing up. If he got to stand in that room as the sympathetic, wronged, misunderstood husband, I wasn't handing him the bonus win of my empty seat, too. The full scope of it hit me 2 weeks before the wedding, on a call with my sister, who was in tears, not because she doubted me, but because she was terrified what my absence, or my presence, might do to her big day. "Mom's already decided how this goes, Ren," she said. "I don't know how to fix that for you. I just need you to survive one afternoon." That's the moment it all reframed for me. This was never actually about whether my family believed the truth. It was about my mom needing a story that asked nothing uncomfortable of her. No confrontation with her own son-in-law. No reckoning with how fast she picked convenience over her own daughter. I'd spent 30 years assuming if I just gave my family enough evidence, enough patience, enough time, they'd eventually see me clearly. Standing in my kitchen, my sister crying on the other end, I finally got it. Clarity was never the problem. My mother could always see me clearly. She just kept choosing, over and over, across 34 years, the version of me that was easier to explain at parties. Rock bottom hit at the rehearsal dinner, the night before the wedding, when my mom pulled me into a hallway at the country club and told me, low and urgent, that Grant's mother had asked, very reasonably, my mom stressed, whether I could keep things pleasant the next day, given how unfair it'd be to Grant to have to explain his side of a private matter to nosy relatives. Grant's side of my marriage. Being explained to my family by his mother as a favor to him. I'm standing in that hallway in a cocktail dress, holding a glass of wine I hadn't even touched, and something in me that had been cracking slowly for 6 months finally just gave. Not into rage, into something quieter, colder, way more permanent. "He gets a side," I said. "I don't get a side. I get a mood to manage so nobody's uncomfortable at a wedding." My mom's face did something complicated. Not quite guilt, more like she was annoyed at being made to notice something she'd rather not. "Renata, please, not tonight." And there it was. The switch flipped. I got it. Standing right there, I'd spent my whole adult life waiting for my family to give me the same benefit of the doubt they handed out automatically to Grant, to my brothers-in-law, to anyone whose story didn't force them to look at their own choices. That benefit of the doubt was never coming. Not because I hadn't earned it, because earning it was never actually how it worked. Belief, in my family, went to whoever made the room easiest to sit in. The choice I couldn't take back wasn't dramatic. No thrown drink, no scene at the rehearsal dinner. I just, quietly, decided I was done managing anybody's comfort at the cost of my own truth. Effective immediately. Starting tomorrow. The one line that matters most in this whole story is what I said to my own reflection in the country club bathroom mirror 5 minutes later, alone, hands flat on the marble counter. I did not survive 4 deployments to spend the rest of my life playing small so my mother could keep her version of the story. I called one person before heading back out to that dinner. Tommy picked up on the second ring. "I need you at that wedding tomorrow," I said. "And I need you to bring your brother's buddy, the seal." Pause. Then Tommy, who knew exactly what I was asking without me spelling it out, said, "He already knows who you are, Ren. Half the guys from that unit still talk about the extraction in Kandahar. You never told your family that part, did you?" "No," I said. "I didn't." "Well," Tommy said, "maybe it's time somebody else did." Before I get into this part, I didn't orchestrate some big spectacle. I didn't ask anybody to make a scene. What happened next happened because the truth, once it finally gets room to breathe, tends to move a lot faster and louder than whoever's trying to keep a lid on it. The reception's in full swing when Petty Officer First Class Marcus Devane, 6'4", dress whites, apparently didn't need much convincing to wear them, walks dead straight across the parking lot toward the patio where I'm standing, having stepped out for air. Having stepped out, if I'm real with you, to get 5 minutes away from Grant's easy laugh drifting across the room. He stops in front of me, snaps to attention, and in a voice pitched to Carrie, not shouting, just clear, the voice of a guy used to being heard over engine noise and gunfire, he says, "Lieutenant Ford, it's an honor, ma'am." Then he salutes. My mom, 12 feet away, just stops mid-sentence. "Don't know if you remember me," Devane says, dropping the salute but not the volume. "I was 22, pinned down outside Kandahar with 2 wounded, radio dead, air support 40 minutes out. You talked our medevac in through weather that grounded everybody else that night. I've got 2 kids now who wouldn't exist if you hadn't made that call. My whole unit still talks about you." The patio's gone dead quiet. Grant, I notice, stops laughing. My mom crosses the space between us like she's wading through water. "I'm sorry, Renata, what's he talking about?" "Kandahar," I said. 2019. It's classified enough that I never got into specifics, and honestly, Mom, you never asked. You knew I was doing something with the government. That's the exact phrase you've used at every dinner party for 6 years. I let you use it because it was easier than making you sit with what I actually did." Grant shows up at the edge of the patio, drink in hand, doing the thing he always does in front of an audience, reaching straight for the charm. "Ren, honey, this is a lot for a wedding reception, don't you think? You told my mother I was emotionally unavailable," I said, and my voice didn't even shake, which surprised me too. "You told her the distance in our marriage explained the affair. So explain, right now, in front of her, what exactly it was I was too distant to give you. Because from where I was standing, I gave you 11 years. And you gave Priya a hotel room under a fake name." Devane didn't budge. Neither did Tommy, who'd appeared at my shoulder at some point without me noticing, arms crossed, a silent second witness to a truth that had waited way too long to get said out loud in this family. Grant didn't answer. That was the answer. My mom's face ran through a few stages in about 90 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, something that might have been the start of shame, and landed on a kind of stunned stillness I'd genuinely never seen on her before. "Renata," she said quiet, "why didn't you ever tell me?" "I tried," I said. "You didn't want the details of my marriage falling apart. You definitely didn't want the details of a war. Learned a long time ago which parts of me you had room for." Grant bounced from the reception within the hour. No goodbye, trailed by a look from his mother he's probably going to be dealing with for a long time. Priya, I heard later through the same family grapevine, that once carried Grant's version of events so efficiently, dumped him 3 weeks later. Apparently she'd bought his whole story about a marriage he was already checked out of. And that got a lot harder to sell once a decorated seal said the word Kandahar in front of 40 wedding guests. My mom didn't have some big cinematic breakdown apology at the reception. That's not her, and I wasn't expecting it. What she did do, 2 days later, sitting across from me at that same kitchen table, was quieter and more honest than I expected. "I think I decided a long time ago it was easier to worry about you being different than to ask you why." Wasn't everything, but from her, it was a lot. The thing that told me something had actually shifted came 3 weeks after the wedding, when my dad, the quiet one, the furniture mover, the guy who noticed stuff and let it sit, called me out of nowhere on a Tuesday and asked, kind of haltingly, if I'd be down to tell him about Kandahar sometime. Not for anybody else, just for him. Something in my chest that had been tight for the better part of a decade finally let go. Not gonna sit here and tell you my mom and I fixed 34 years of pattern over one awkward wedding reception. 'Cause we didn't. And any story claiming we did would be lying to you the same way Grant lied to my family. We're still working on it. She still reaches for the easier explanation before the harder truth sometimes. Old habits don't just dissolve because of one parking lot moment. But she asks now, where she used to assume. That's the whole difference. And it's not nothing. Divorce finalized 4 months later. I got the house. Grant got, best I can tell, a way smaller circle of people willing to take his version of events at face value, which feels like an appropriate, unglamorous kind of consequence. Told my dad about Kandahar. Not all of it. Some stuff really isn't for kitchen tables, in any family. but more than I'd told anybody in that house in 6 years. He listened without flinching, and at the end he just said, "I'm sorry I never asked sooner." Which is the sentence I've been waiting 15 years to hear from somebody in that family. And it hit way harder coming quiet from him than it would have shouted from anyone else. Tommy and I still talk, by the way. Not romantic, want to be clear on that. Would have been a tidier story if it went there, but that's not this story. He's just the one person in that family who saw me before anybody asked him to. And that's rarer than romance, honestly. And I'm not letting that go just because the crisis that introduced us is over. Families don't usually pick the truth on their own. Most of the time, they pick whatever version costs them the least, and it takes something loud, something impossible to ignore, standing at attention in a parking lot, to make the cost of the easy story finally outweigh the comfort of believing it. I spent 30 years making myself easy to explain. Took one salute, in front of people who'd known me my whole life and still hadn't really looked, to get that being believed was never something I had to earn. Some people will only ever see you clearly once somebody else forces the issue. Let them. And then don't shrink back down once they do.